Hello and welcome to the first slot of the day. My name is Thomas Riedl. I'm very happy to be here. And of course, I am not alone. With me is the first keynote speaker of the day, Eleanor Harding. Welcome, welcome. She's
Thank you.
she's senior product manager at Twitter and former service designer at NASA. And when the pandemic hit Twitter, of course, something happened there too, and you had to adopt it. So this is why the title of this talk is Creating a Balanced Framework, How to Start a New Project in a Pandemic. And then that's it from my side. I give you the stage. Have fun, please.
Thank you very much. As Stefan mentioned, my name is Eleanor Harding. I'm a senior product manager at Twitter, and I look after our work that oversees taking snippets of conversation and spreading them far across the world through websites, through articles and apps. And where they appear in those places, they give people context, they provide credible links to sources, and they give people a chance to join in public conversation wherever they find it. You can find me on Twitter. If you want to chat with me while I'm speaking, you can send me any questions. My Twitter handle is on Zoom over there. It's @tweetanor. Now, before we start, I don't have any slides. So if you're expecting to see any presentation or slides, there's not going to be anything over there. Instead, these sticky notes are my talk. So I'm going to be using this while I speak. And I hope you'll enjoy this as a slightly different talk format. So to start, let's rewind to February of this year. And think with me for a second, what were you doing in February? And how were you feeling in February? I was feeling seriously stressed out at work. I was feeling really overwhelmed by the amount of stuff that I needed to get done. It felt like there was just so much stuff coming into my plate that I needed to deal with, and I just didn't have enough time in the day to do it. And so because of that, I was feeling really overworked. I was doing a lot of extra hours. I was coming into the office early and I would leave really late. I work a lot with people in San Francisco because Twitter's headquarters is over there. So it's really, really easy to just like stay another hour later or attend a late meeting. So it's very easy to like do a couple of extra hours. So I was working really hard, and I felt like as a product manager, I wasn't quite reaching the levels that I was aiming for. I knew that I needed to deliver for the customer, but I felt like I wasn't delivering enough value for them. I wanted to give them more. And I knew that I needed to facilitate for my team, but I felt like I wasn't reaching them well enough where they were to equip them, to unblock them, to connect them with other teams, to like tell the story between my team and leadership. Like I wasn't reaching the standards that I'd set for myself, which were probably quite unrealistic. And all things considered, I was taking myself right towards burnout. And I was already on the brink of it if I hadn't already reached that point in February. Now, luckily, past Eleanor had scheduled a holiday at that time. And so that was a great way to like take a step back and in theory, reset from my burnout. I booked a flight to South Africa where I grew up. So any flight back there is a chance to see family. It's a really nice way to relax. And this one particularly was a chance to go to a friend's wedding. So I went to South Africa at the end of February and I did not unplug at all. I still kept checking my Slack messages. I still kept looking at my inbox and reading through my emails. I even attended a couple of meetings, even though I was supposed to be on holiday. So I had convinced myself that I was recovering from my burnout, but I just didn't make any progress on that at all. And then one day, on the 15th of March, on a day when the total cumulative number of COVID-19 cases in South Africa had reached 38, on a day before any deaths had been reported from South Africa, on a day where the chance of getting sick was 1 in 2 million, I got sick with the coronavirus. And overnight, it flipped my entire year on its head. But it also changed my approach to product management. So that's what I want to talk to you today, how this experience has sort of changed my perspective a little bit. And after I got sick, I ended up taking 4 months away from work to really recover properly. And so by the time I came back, I decided to come back to a new team, a new project, And so I needed to figure out a way to kind of help myself get through that as a process. There were three big questions that I needed to find answers to. The first one was, how do you get back into things after a long time away? The next one that I was starting with was, how do you build trust with a new team, and how do you get started on new work? And then finally, I needed to figure out, how do you keep a balance between performing really well and taking care of yourself? Knowing that I want to do well, but I also need to be really realistic about where I am. So if you're not a product manager, that's totally fine. A lot of the stuff is going to be applicable to lots of different fields work-wise, and hopefully applicable to yours. In talking to people about this, I also heard a lot of people compare it to coming back from parental leave. So maybe there's something in that as well. And then one thing I'm not going to talk about today is finding a new role during this weird time. I'm going to focus instead on what it's like to start at the beginning of something. And then one final caveat, that I know that many of you may or may not have gotten sick from COVID-19, or know people that have been affected by it, or know people that have passed away. So I want to be really respectful of that. Just share a bit of a story today. So getting sick is just not what I expected out of 2020 at all. And it happened at a time when I was feeling really burnt out, and I was feeling quite low in terms of what I felt like I was able to do. And so I had a couple of challenges in front of me. I knew that I needed to build up my confidence. And I knew that I needed to be really realistic about getting back into things, and to learn how to prioritize my own health, which I was not very good at doing previously. So I want to share three tools, three frameworks that I've adopted to help me through that. And it would be wonderful if by the end of this talk, you've got at least one that you can take away with you, that you can apply in your job starting tomorrow, and see if that helps you create more of a balanced framework in your approach to these things. So let's start with the first of the three ideas that I want to share. This one really helped me feel like I was in control of my situation, and helped me set some personal guidelines that gave me enough movement to be able to make progress, but helped me like constrain myself in a way that was really healthy. Now, I did this by setting boundaries and expectations. And I focused my efforts on setting my boundaries on my working hours. The team that I joined is almost entirely based on the West Coast of America and Canada. So there's a huge time difference between the teams. The end of my day is only the start of their day, which makes it so easy to work really late hours. So I decided I will start my day a little bit later, but I'm going to set very fixed working hours, and I'm not going to make any exceptions to that. I won't work after that. I'm not going to start before that. I'm going to like top and tail my day very explicitly. And so I sent my team an email about that, and I set it up in my calendar to say, like, these are my boundaries. I'm not going to go over them. And I'm sure many of you are thinking, like, that's really tough to just log off at the end of the day. I mean, especially if you're working from home, it's really difficult to just close your laptop and walk away. I find that too. So the two things that I worked on in that space were, I set up like zones in my flat, specific like working zones and non-working zones. And this, being in my own office, is very new for me. I've moved into this apartment like 3 weeks ago. So the zones that I set up in my last apartment were where my desk was about a meter away from the sofa. Just by like explicitly zoning those two places apart and saying that my laptop is not allowed to move from one to the other, I was able to like keep work in that place and set a time by the end of the day that I'm just going to be done with work and moving away from it. The other thing that I did here to make sure that I wasn't doing loads of extra hours was by measuring my productivity by week rather than by day. I knew that there would be days that I wouldn't be feeling very well, or days didn't feel like I had been productive at all. But I figured that if I measure my productivity by the end of the week, then it's okay if there's a bad day in it, and I won't feel motivated to like work really hard to make up for that. And I'll tell you more about how I measured stuff by week in one of the later points. The second thing I did, I just told you about boundaries, then I also worked on expectations. And I worked on expectations with my manager and also with my team. So with my manager, on the first day that I started with them, I scheduled check-ins, a 30-day, 60-day, 90-day check-in. 30 minutes in the calendar with an agenda of talking about what's going well and what's not going well. Really simple, super straightforward, but one of the most effective tools that I've had going into this. It made me feel quite comfortable knowing that I had an opportunity planned to discuss how things were going. And it's been really great to get ahead of problems and to identify stuff as it's going. And it's also been good to hear feedback on how I'm doing through those things. So that was really helpful. I also shared a document that had my goals in it. I included my strengths and my weaknesses, and just writing down all of that stuff really helped me kind of ground myself to build up that foundation of confidence to get back into things. I also shared expectations with my team by sharing my priorities with the team. I set up one-on-one calls with everyone to let them all know, like, I am prioritizing my health. That's the most important thing for me here. And the unexpected benefit of that was that those turned into really wholesome conversations with everyone. Because I was being so open and vulnerable and honest, the conversations became so much deeper, and it became the surprising way of building up trust with my new team. All right, so I've covered setting boundaries and expectations, boundaries through working hours, and then expectations with my manager and with my team. Let's now shift onto the second framework. This is something that I learned about in a book called The Build Trap by Melissa Perry, and it's excellent. I love it because it's a book about product management that approaches it from the angle of the most common mistake that product managers make. So it's very good. I would recommend it. And I was reading these books as I was doing my recovery, like as I was starting to feel a little bit better. I started reading more, and I started studying a little bit more so that I could remind myself that I know how to do this job, just to build up a bit of confidence. So the second one really helped me to find direction at the start, at a time when, you start on a new project and you have no idea what your first week should look like. Like, where do you start your focus to start building up the work that you're going to be doing, and when it's all feeling really overwhelming? Now, product management is this field of uncertainty. There are things that we know, and there are loads of things that we don't know. And so I decided to apply this framework where you start with what you know, starting with the facts. And facts come from research, and they come from data. So the first thing I did was to find all possible data sources and user research that I could. And from those, extract out the important facts and turn them into a list with references. From those facts, those things that you know, emerge the things that you don't know, the questions. So from those facts come questions, where you're looking at a research report and you think, oh, I wish they had more information on this. Now you have a question that you need to answer over there. Or when looking at data and seeing a pattern in the graph and thinking, oh, I wish I knew more about what that pattern was, there's a question there to go and address. So from that list of facts, I then created a list of questions, which informed future work to do with data science and with user research. And I was able to do some quick turnaround on that to really increase my understanding of the space. From facts to questions to intuition. Intuition is the stuff that you don't know that you do know, the unknown knowns. And intuition forms this incredible basis and foundation for hypotheses. And hypotheses are the building blocks of product management. Having reviewed the facts and having answered the questions, you now have an instinct of things that might work really well as product ideas. So for example, if I look after embedded tweets, I think that if I put a reply box on the bottom of an embedded tweet and make it really easy for someone to be able to respond to that content if it resonates with them, then we'll see a meaningful increase on replies to embedded tweets. And so that's this instinct that I have. I think it might work. It's based on the fact, and I can now turn that into a product project. So I was able to go through that step-by-step process to go from totally overwhelmed to I know where to start and I have a basis of things that I can prioritize. And then the final one of those four things is discovery. After you've done your facts, your questions, your instinct, that leaves discovery, to find all the big gaps between the stuff. Where's the area of opportunity that we're not covering yet? And I mean gaps and areas of opportunity quite literally, because if we move to this section of sticky notes in my office, this is actually all of the work that I did following this framework. I've got blue sticky notes here that are facts. The green ones are questions. The yellow ones are how I'm going to answer that question or find the answer to it. And then the pink ones are the hypotheses. And these purple ones are the discovery. These purple ones are these big gaps in opportunity that I need to go and do more research about. And so using sticky notes has been a really powerful tool to do this stuff. And I've organized all of the sticky notes according to the customer journey of the customer group that I look after. So having this visually has been an incredible tool from going from feeling totally overwhelmed to having a plan that I can tackle as a product manager. All right, that was step number 2, framework number 2. This is the third and final framework that I want to share with you, and also just do a time check while I'm doing it. Okay, so third and final framework, now that you've set expectations and boundaries and figured out where to start, how do you get stuff done? Especially having been away for a couple of months, like learning how to get stuff done becomes a little tricky. So I did this through ruthless prioritization, which is from Digitale in her book Rise, which is also an excellent book. Like both of these books that I've mentioned are really good, and I'll tweet out links to them afterwards if you're looking for them. The idea here is that you start by identifying the stuff that matters most to the business. Like, what's the big business goal that the company is trying to achieve? And then reframing all of your work in that context. How is your work going to help the company make progress towards that? And then from that, in a week, you can pick 3 things and no more that'll help you make progress towards that thing. And then that becomes your focus for the week. Earlier, I spoke about measuring my productivity on a week basis instead of a day-by-day basis. So I would start the week using my bullet journal, which is just like a blank Moleskine book. And I would write down Monday to Friday and then leave a section for my goals. And in that section for my goals, I would write down 3 ruthless priorities that are going to help me make progress this week. And that's my focus. I need to focus on completing those things before anything else. And if I finish them in the week, then pick another 3. And don't pick a new 3 until those first 3 are finished. And so that was really helpful to make progress. It was really great to be able to share this with the team because it helped me understand what I think is important, and to share it with my manager to get them to buy in on helping me deliver these things as well. So if you focus on the stuff that's most valuable out of all of this, it'll look like you're making a lot of progress, even if you don't have as many productive hours in the week. If you're delivering the stuff that's most impactful, it makes you seem really productive and helps you build up that credibility and confidence all over again. So I mentioned that a bullet journal was really helpful for me for this as a tool. Another tool that I found really helpful here is an app, a Mac app called Slash. You can find that, I think, at getslash.co, which is just a really great way of like making your way down a task list. And it's been really helpful for me. And so by getting these important things done, you're gaining up credibility and you're gaining up influence because you're finishing important things. Okay, I've covered 3 frameworks. Let's quickly recap. I started this year on the brink of burnout and ended up very unexpectedly getting sick. To get back into things, I decided to apply a bit of a balanced framework to ease my way back in. I did that by setting boundaries and expectations, by starting with facts, then questions and instinct. And thirdly, I did ruthless prioritization by focusing just on the 3 most important things. So how's it going? Well, the good news is that I'm feeling really healthy. I'm feeling really good in the work that I'm doing. About a week ago, I did my 60-day check-in with my manager, and I heard some really great feedback on the progress that I've made and the approach that I've taken. And I was really grateful for that kind of open, honest communication that we could have in that moment. And a really great way of being able to reflect backwards myself and be really pleased with the progress that we've made. But not only that, I'm also really proud of the progress that the team has made in delivering for the customer by launching some really cool things, and that I've helped them by facilitating them. The thing that I'm really proud of this week is that the team managed to launch some extra contextual labels on tweets that contain misinformation, and that was used hugely across the US elections. So I'm really happy that as a product manager, I'm doing the kind of things that I need to be doing. So through all of these things, I found a way to ease back into work, to get started on a new project, to build up trust with a new team. And all doing that by keeping this balanced framework between performing well and prioritizing my own health and taking care of myself. So I'd love for you to be able to take one of those tools away with you that you can try and apply in your work tomorrow. And I'd love for you to tweet anything that you want to take away from this talk. Or you can ask me any questions on Twitter @tweetanall. So thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate your attention this morning. And I hope you enjoy the rest of the day of talks. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the insights. It was really a great talk. Thank you very much. And of course, we have a lot of questions already in chat. And therefore, I would hand over to Stefan. Please.
So yes, we have questions here in our chat, and I go for the second one. Nick asks, curious if these sticky notes are in your office and you cannot travel, is there a tool to have some sort of a digital twin?
Yeah, the digital twin for sticky notes that I really enjoy is Jamboard by Google, because at Twitter we use all of the Google apps like Gmail and Google Docs and those sorts of things. And so Jamboard is something that's accessible by everyone, like they don't need a new account to be able to access it. And then it's got great sticky note capability. So that's really good. Otherwise, I would use something maybe like Figma or Miro is really good, but I choose to prefer tools that are just accessible by everyone and like easy to get hold of. So whatever everyone else can get into, whatever your team has access to is what I would recommend. I've also, I mentioned earlier, I moved apartments. Like I moved this whole set of sticky notes with me. I just kind of put them into piles and stuck them back up on the wall again.
And how long did you take to sort them again, that it's looking like that?
It was surprisingly quick. I was impressed that it only took me about 10 minutes to get them back. Like they're very well organized according to the customer journey, even though it looks like a beautiful mess.
Awesome. Yeah, and we have another question. Stefan, please.
Yes, we have one more question from Thomas Glaser. Question for you, Eleanor. Are you using a specific framework to structure your discovery efforts?
You know what? The discovery efforts, I think trying to apply a framework to it, I've never found something that works incredibly well because it's such unknown work and you're kind of following rabbit holes to see like what's important or what's not important. I just approach it as incredibly unstructured work. So I'll still keep an eye out for a good framework, but I haven't found one that's excellent yet.
And I think we still have time for another question. Stefan, handing over to you again.
Yes, there is one more question. It's a bit more a general question. How does your product organization at Twitter looks like? How many product owners, developers, and UX designers work together there?
Oh, I don't even know what the total number is, but it's huge. Out of product managers alone, I think we have upwards of 150, and we're spread across the world in all sorts of different places. We have a very large organization called Experience, which includes the product managers, the engineers, data scientists, user researchers, designers, like the whole lot that all come together and work on things. But I'm not sure what the total number of people is. Generally at Twitter, you'll get people that work in teams of about 14 people is the general trend. And then that's a combination of all of those types of people, also including QA, quality assurance or quality engineering and engineering managers and a bunch of different people that come together to build things like that.
Okay, and we still have room for another question. Stefan, do we still have one?
Yeah, this is more a fun question, I think. Someone asked, is there a minimum amount of tweets a day a Twitter employee has to do?
Love that. We don't have a quota of tweets that we're supposed to tweet, but the more the better, of course.